This is the John Batchelor Show. Larry Kudlow reports and Kudlow Radio on the weekend is here as my colleague and co-host, anticipating the State of the Union 1 week tomorrow, 1 week and 24 hours. There's time to think about it. There's a snowstorm in the East Coast of the United States. You can sit back and ponder the president and his remarks. He's telegraphing, just like a quarterback, saying, I'm going to throw this ball to that receiver and I'm going to win. Income inequality, that's the long pass the president will throw because he does not want to address issues that are pressing us after the collapse of the expectation of the Affordable Care Act and the troubled economy, the slow growth economy these years of the Great Recession. Income inequality. I follow this from a recent editorial op-ed page in the Wall Street Journal by David Malpass about income inequality as a wedge issue. Mr. Malpass is president of Encima Global. He was Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary in the Reagan administration and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the George H.W. Bush administration. David, a very good new year to you. Income inequality. Okay, we know he's going to say it. He's telegraphed it. It's going to come. Here it goes. He identifies with the poor. And what are the Republicans going to do about it? Good evening, David.
Hi, good evening, John, and hi, hello, Larry. Well, the president will say it, and it's a powerful issue in part because we do have a situation where the rich have been doing very well in this economy that he created, and the median incomes have been going down, and I think are still very weak. So it's a powerful issue. I think he's going to say it, and the Republicans really need to come back and say, you're part of the cause. And I'm a little afraid so far the Republican response has been, we want growth. Well, of course, the president has said that also. He's going to trump that issue and say he wants growth more than the Republicans. So I think the Republicans have to come back and say big government is causing this problem.
David, what happens when Obama says he wants to help the middle class, which is sort of a code word, I think, for A, soaking the rich, B, soaking business, and then C, spending more on his favorite projects. But what should specifically do you think the GOP should say? Let's say, starting next Tuesday night in the rebuttal to the president. What should they say?
I think head on that the government can't help the middle class. That it's a facade. That you'll do programs, but we know that goes against, or the money has to come from the people, and so it can't be the case that bigger government helps the middle class. We agree that we need a safety net, a social safety net for people at the lower end, and so we approve and want to make those programs work, but you can't have programs that help the middle class. That's just the definition of socialism, Mr. President.
I mean, he's running around. He's already started with, you watched them last week with these manufacturing hubs, which is an odd thing, but he opened one up in North Carolina, and he basically, I think, is shifting, to a protectionist position, arguing we have to create jobs in America and not overseas. And, of course, he wants clean energy, more projects, more Solyndra-type projects. So, again, the GOP's got to respond to this stuff. No, they have to offer an alternative vision.
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, the vision is private sector growth, and that will work. But I think there's got to be a head-on confrontation over bigger government. That each time the president says, I want manufacturing centers here, Republicans have to say, that's bigger government. We know it doesn't work. And I think that's a missing piece right now. We talk about wanting to generate faster growth, but the problem with that I see is the government now is a full partner with the private sector. So if you simply have faster growth, it means bigger government, and the president will be happy to spend that money.
Some conservatives argue that the Republican Party's best effort at attracting middle-class voters is a substantial expansion of the child tax credit. David, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think we do need to have, and the public supports more children, and that's clearly a very costly part of what's hitting the middle class. Now, I've got to say, though, Larry, I'm for lower rates and a broader base. Each time the government tries to micromanage behavior through the tax code, I think it ends up backfiring and undercutting the middle class. So let me come to the point. The debt limit is coming up, and I think there has to be a Republican platform to rewrite the debt limit so that it restrains the size of government as a way of getting the middle class better off.
David, my understanding on small businesses, because that's a concern of one of the paragraphs in your op-ed here. I've been learning from small business advocates that the Affordable Care Act is guaranteed to make their lives awful. The bosses and the workers, that the bosses who offer health care for their individuals see higher costs across, no matter what the choices are. The Affordable Care Act's site for small businesses doesn't even operate yet, so you're on your own. And then workers are being given a stipend and saying, buy your own health care, we can't afford it. So isn't this an example of Mr. Obama's own policy guaranteeing that the middle class is not going to prosper?
Yes, and I think this is true in many areas of government. But coming to the Affordable Care Act, remember how it was passed, not a single Republican vote, and it was, I forget, 2,000 pages long, and the regulations still haven't been written. Washington has thousands of people working to write regulations, and they still haven't come to the end of the project. But isn't that the same as what they've done in each of the areas? You've got the Small Business Administration taking money from the people in order to lend it to small businesses. What kind of sense is that? And it's a very complicated, cumbersome process. And so it hurts. It ends up hurting the real median income, meaning the middle class income is pushed down as the government gets bigger. It passes these gigantic bills, and also remember one thing that the president has been doing that I think there should be more pushback on is creating these agencies inside the government without legislation, without control from voters. So there's the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, for example, that they created inside the Federal Reserve, and so it doesn't even require appropriations. It just operates independently and has a devastating effect on the middle class.
That's the administrative state. And energy. Larry and I speak about it routinely. We have to talk about it every week, Larry, at least once. The president's anti-energy policies and refusing to build Keystone is again keeping the middle class without prosperity, because there are all those jobs in energy that are going waiting.
And let's keep in mind why they're able to keep this issue powerful, because under the Federal Reserve's policies, they've got the rate set at zero. That really benefits and drives capital to the upper income, to the rich, so the public really does have an axe to grind. There's a giant problem, and I think Republicans need to agree with that and then propose a different solution from the president.
Larry, would energy do it?
Talking about on the energy point, we talked about this tonight on our show. Energy has been such a booster to the economy.
Right.
It's probably provided 10% of the growth in this mediocre recovery. But we are now, with fracking and horizontal drilling, we are actually generating what's called sweet light crude, which is very efficient. The trouble is we don't have refineries for it. All the old days of oil was heavy dark crude, and so we need to get the regulations. We need to deregulate the refinery process so we can take full advantage of this tremendous energy source, oil from fracking. We've got to build refineries.
And John, that problem goes much broader. The government controls almost every aspect of this. For example, Alaska.
30 seconds, David. Go ahead.
Okay, Alaska can't send its oil to Japan. When it sends its oil, it has to be done on very expensive shipping that the government controls, and so through laws. And so Republicans, I think, really have to come back and say there's a better middle-class future, and it requires limits on government.
David Malpass, president of Encima Global, former Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in 2 different Republican administrations. Larry Kudlow of Kudlow Reports at CNBC and Kudlow Radio on the Weekend. I'm John Batchelor.